guys, welcome to Red 50. Thank you for tuning into another video. If you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Alright, so today's video I wanted to address on how to use pedal shifters in your car and maximize the car's power using the pedal shifters. A while back I did a pedal shifters tutorial which was well received. However, the most asked question in the comment section was, how do you know when to shift to maximize the power? In that tutorial, I laid out some conservative guidelines to know when to upshift and downshift using pedal shifters without messing up anything in your car. But not knowing the exact car that you drive, it's kind of difficult for me to tell you when to shift using the pedal shifters to maximize the power in your specific car. So in this video, I will break it out for you guys in 3 easy steps to maximize the power in your car with the pedal shifters, whether you're going to Mexico or just having some fun on the back roads. I will be using my 2019 Mustang GT with the 5.0 as I go through those 3 easy steps I mentioned earlier. This will kind of help you to use those steps and mirror what I'm doing with whatever car you may have in order to maximize the power using the paddle shifters. With that being said, let's dive right into the video. Alright, so for step 1, we have to know what car you have and what engine you have, as most cars will have multiple engine options across different trims, so it's crucial to know what engine option you have. In my case, I have a 2019 Mustang GT with a 5-liter V8. If I had an EcoBoost, it would be a little different, so you'll see why in the future steps. Now once you've got that down, we've kind of got step 1A, I guess so to speak. We have to know what the engine's red line is. This can be seen on the gauge. As you can see, my 2019 Mustang GT has a red line of 7,400 RPM. The EcoBoost engine, which is a 4-cylinder turbo engine, has a red line of 6,500 RPM, so you can kind of see why it's important to know what engine you have, as you don't want to over rev your engine and mess up anything in the car. Now that we have the step 1 down, let's talk about the step 2, and that is knowing the car's power band. I want you to pay close attention to this step, as this is the reason why it varies wildly as to when to shift your car using a pedal shifter to maximize the power. To get the power band of your car, I guess the best way would be to just Google it. So let's say you have a Dodge Challenger, 2017 Dodge Challenger V6. You can Google 2017 Dodge Challenger V6 stock dyno graph. What the dyno graph does is pretty much kind of tells you when the engine is making power throughout the RPM. Basically, a big displacement engine will make its power most likely down low. So a car like such as Camaro with a 6.2 pushrod engine is going to have a lot more power down low than I have with my 2019 Mustang GT with the 5.0 high revving V8. So it's kind of important to see what engine you have, and we'll dive right into that in a bit. So if your car comes with a turbo per se, which is starting to become really common, then it may make power early on, but will kind of fall flat on its face towards the higher end of the RPM. With those things in mind, so let's take a look at my Mustang GT with the 5.0. So as we said, if you were to Google the stock dyno graph on that, you'll see the car kind of starts making power from 3,500 RPM all the way to 7,400 RPM redline, as we discussed. Now it may seem logical to just shift at the red line to get the most power. Well, not so much, which is why it's important to know the graph of your specific car. If you look at the Mustang EcoBoost, which is the 4-cylinder turbo, which we said has a red line of 6,500 RPM, that engine makes power from 2,000 RPM, but it kind of dies down around 5,500 RPM, even though the red line is 6,500 RPM, which basically means that it doesn't make any sense to rev it out all the way to 6,500 RPM. We're making the same amount of power. This is really common with the turbo engines these days, which are starting to become common in pretty much all cars these days. Even the Accord or Civic, they all got turbos. 10 years ago, if you told me, your average economy car is going to have a turbo, I would have just laughed at you straight to your face. Now, the downside with a turbo used to be that there was turbo lag. So the turbo would kind of spool up and you would have to wait to 3,000, 4,000 RPM before it kicked in. Now with the manufacturers pushing turbos in pretty much all the cars, they don't want a normal driver to, wait for the turbo lag. So what they've done is put smaller turbos, which spools faster. So that's why you're able to get power from 2,000 RPM in the EcoBoost Mustang, but it kind of falls flat on its face around 5,500 RPM, even though that's not the red line. Now for our last step, which is a step 3, that kind of combines the step 1 and step 2 based on what we've learned from those steps, and we will apply it together in the step 3, which will help us to maximize the power using the pedal shifters. Alright, so I'm using my 2019 Mustang GT as a demo car, so Based on what we discussed earlier, we know my car's red line is 7,400 RPM, and we also know the car makes power from the 3,500 RPM all the way to red line at 7,400 RPM based on looking at the dyno graphs. So for upshifting, to maximize the power using the pedal shifters, I know I have to be shifting at 7,400 RPM to make sure I'm not giving up on any power. Let's say if I'm shifting and I don't know, maybe I upshift at 64, 6,500 RPM. I know there's another 1,000 RPMs, and based on how this car makes power, I know I'm giving up on some power that 5.0 has to give. Now for downshifting using the paddle shifters, I have to make sure the downshift triggers the RPM to be above 3,500 RPMs or so. If I'm on back roads, I just want to have some fun with the car. If I downshift and the RPMs drop to 2,000 RPM, then I kind of have to wait for the engine to, rev it out to 3,500 before I can feel like I'm in the power band. So if I'm cruising around at 2,000 RPM and I want to downshift, it may just go up to like, depending on what gear I am, it may just go up to like 25 or 2,800 RPM. I still have to wait for the car to go. But if I'm cruising at 3,000 RPM and downshift, it's probably going to shoot it up to 4,000 RPM, which puts me right at the power band and I'm good to go. So basically when I kind of combine those tricks and use the downshifting to my advantage and rev it out all the way before upshifting at the red line of 7,400 RPM, this makes the car so much more fun as you're always in the power band and you constantly feel like the car is pulling and pulling and pulling. If I try to floor it with the pedal shifters and the RPMs at, I don't know, 3,000 RPM, it takes a little bit to like feel the car is moving. But once you're above 3,500, 4,000 RPM, it just feels like, it's just going to pull like a freight train. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it. I highly encourage you guys to use the pedal shifters to maximize the power in your automatic car. Automatic can be a little bit boring if you're just kind of cruising around, which is where the fun is for the manual. But it doesn't hurt to use the pedal shifters to have fun when you're in back roads, enjoying the car. And just keep in mind the ECU is always there to protect the car. So if you, depending on what car you're driving, let's say your red line is 6,500 RPM and you're just having so much fun you kind of forget to upshift, either the ECU is gonna cut the power out or shift it for you. In my Mustang's case, it will shift it for me. So don't be afraid in the beginning as you're kind of trying it out, what works best for your car, and you'll kind of know how much it pulls where the peak power band is. But don't be afraid as you're driving around, you're not going to over rev your engine if you have an automatic. The ECU is always there to protect you and the car. So go out there, have fun. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe to Red 50 for more videos.